Yeah, we are live now. So, hello everyone. I hope you all are doing well and amazing. Your Hacktoberfest is also going amazing. So, as you all know, like SheBuilds is organizing an event which is called SheBuilds Hacktoberfest, and it's our last session itself. And today we have Harsh with us, and we will be discussing more about how you can seize opportunities through open source itself. And Harsh will share some experience, how he cracked some internships, and other than that, Harsh is currently working as an engineer at local stat, and previously he worked with some amazing firms like HackerRank and Red Hat and more, and participated in different programs, open source programs like Google Summer of Code, MLH Fellowship, and many more. So over to you, Harsh.
Hi, Bhavna. Thanks for inviting me for this session. And I'm just really glad to be here. So, hi, I'm Harsh. I currently work as an engineer at Local Stack, and I'm based out of Darjeeling, India. So, you might know that it's pretty much like I'm working remotely right now. And as Bhavna mentioned, like I have done a few internships here and there at various companies like HackerRank, OneSite, Red Hat, to name a few. So my background is mostly in DevOps, cloud native engineering, and web. And for the past like 1 year, 1.5 year or so, like I've mostly been working in the whole cloud native space. That involves like a healthy amount of interacting with things like AWS, Docker, Kubernetes, GitHub Actions, CI/CD pipelines, and all of these kind of things. Uh, so I also participated in a few open source programs like Google Summer of Code, Google Season of Docs, MLH Fellowship. And I guess it has helped me quite a lot in building out my whole open source experience and helping me out in the journey itself. So I believe that this session is going to be helpful in a way because I will be sharing my experiences and what are the exact things that worked out for me, and maybe you can take some of the insights and you can try to apply those same learnings in your case as well. I do want to reiterate that there is going to be a strong survivorship bias over here because the things that worked out for me may not work out for you, but you can definitely take the learnings and you can definitely take the insights and see like what are the things that you can possibly do in your own journey to kind of get to the things that would be pretty suitable for you in your career. So yeah, I guess let's get started.
Yeah, so for now, we will take some questions that we got from your side audience, and I will take it one by one, and Harsh will answer all of them.
Yeah.
So, the first question that we got from audience is what inspired you to get involved in open source projects? Like, as I know, like you contributed a lot of open source projects. So,
Mhm.
this is the question that I feel you can answer more relevantly.
Sure. I guess that's a pretty interesting one. So, just a bit of a background. I studied in Satyabhama University, and like it's based out of Chennai. And when I went to the college, we didn't had a very strong coding culture as per se. So obviously, it was a bit tough, and the the professors were supporting, the faculty was supporting, but the students themselves were not very interested in doing coding or programming or even software engineering in general. Like we always see these engineering memes on Instagram and all the social media handles. Like we always think like, okay, this is something that we always do at the end of our college life. It's not something that we should like be starting on it from now onwards itself. The first year was coming at an end, and then we got the huge hit. We saw the whole placement data, and to be honest, it was pretty terrible. Uh, so we always take a look not at the outliers, but always at the average student, and then we realize that if we are not putting in a lot of hard work, like a lot of dedication, we might end up just being average. And like as many of the students might relate to this, college placements always get to be terrible, and like it's always like there are a few chosen companies that you always have a chance to get into. So this hit us like pretty hard, and now we realize that okay, we need to figure out something. We need to like find some ways to get better at whatever we are doing right now. So I personally started like going through the whole traditional route. I saw that a lot of students are doing certification courses. And I'm not sure about the craze right now, but I guess like back in those days, everyone was doing a certification course, like Coursera, Udemy, and like these were the platforms where people used to do a lot of the certification courses. So I went into the same path. I just started doing some certification courses, scoring those certificates, like going through the entire course. And it gave me the belief that I have some real world skills right now at that time, not right now. So it gave me the belief. And then one day I was like sitting in my library trying to complete a course. And one of my seniors, who happened to be like the second person to get into Google Server of Code from my college, actually came up to me and he said, like, okay, Harsh, whatever you're doing, it's admirable, but that's not going to work out. And I'm like, okay, so if it's not going to work out, what exactly will work out? And then he explained to me, like, okay, you won't be getting traditional internships right from the college. You might have to wait for your placement time to come in. So things are going to really get hard for you. So what if you can get some real world practical experience from now onwards? And I was like, okay, how can we get this out? And he was like, start contributing to open source. I guess that's the best way for you. So I got into the whole world, like, okay, what open source is. And coincidentally, it was the month of October. So it was October 2019. I still remember the day and the time when this exactly happened. And I was like, okay, this looks pretty interesting. Hacktoberfest was going on in the parallel. So I was like, okay, this is the perfect opportunity. Let's maybe get a few contributions in. And maybe this can be like acting as a very good head start. So I managed to make a few good contributions. I got that traditional Hacktoberfest T-shirt. Even I managed to get a few of my friends the T-shirt as well because it was so fascinating for them. But then I got to know, like, okay, this is something that is going to really play out well in the coming months or maybe even coming years. So I decided to like start participating in the smaller open source programs. So over then there was this one program called as the JIIT Summer of Code that was organized by JIIT itself. And over there, I contributed to a project under Anmol. So Anmol was one of my first early mentors who contributed me in the open source realm itself. So like these experiences helped me to have a collective idea about what exactly it takes to contribute to open source. What are the basic etiquettes? What are the basic contribution flows and all of these kind of things. And once I got acquainted with that, then things got really easy for me. I also like took up this opportunity to do a few internships in that time. So open source like helped me to get a few good internships in this realm as well. Because I was able to show that, hey, I contributed to this open source project. Hey, I built out this particular project. And as I completed my internship at one of the companies based out of Bangalore, it was called QXF2. So right after then, I got into MLH fellowship, and it was like I was in the first batch itself. So MLH had this whole concept of batches. So it was the first batch was the zeroth batch, then the first batch, then the second batch, and so on. So I did not get into the whole zeroth batch, but I got into the first batch, and I guess yeah, that was the whole start of the journey. So it took like a good 1 year, right from the introduction to actually get something that is really crucial for you. And once you get into one good opportunity, once you have like a definite chance of proving your work in front of like the people, I guess from then onwards it gets really really simple to get you started. And I guess like this is what exactly inspired me. There was a certain desperation to do something. There was a certain desperation to like achieve something that's real and do something that's practical. And I guess that's exactly what played well for me.
Yeah, like my journey itself also started like that. Like I am from the BSc background. Even in my college,
Hmm.
did no one even code itself, and
Yeah.
most of us will be dependent on college placement itself. So I
Hmm.
feel open source just change something, everything for me.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's take some other questions that
Hmm.
one of us asked. How can college student benefits from participating in open source project itself?
Yeah, definitely. I guess that's also a good question because a lot of people see open source just from these three to four different programs altogether. Like there is GSOC, GSOD, LFX, MLH Fellowship, and all of these things. Uh, so now the question comes like how students can benefit out. So as a student, you have very few opportunities of actually doing some practical work. Like you go into the college, you learn some basic programming languages. You learn some basics things over there. Nothing is really concrete as of such to actually start building out something practical. So you need to show that you have practical experience because that's exactly what works out in the job market. So what are the ways that you can do that? First, you have got the traditional way of doing internships. I guess this is something that almost everyone does. Now, with the problem of internship is that there is a definite benchmark that you need to set. So it's not just the hard skills that you need to satisfy, it's also the soft skills. It's also like how well have you prepared for these interviews, which might sometimes be daunting for a lot of individuals. Personally, in the whole remote working space, I know a lot of people who don't even want to do interviews with people. They're like, okay, give us the assignments, give us something to prove our work, but we won't exactly get into an interview where we will try to prove our technical skills to someone for an hour or two. This is something that is pretty much daunting, and if it's daunting for like well qualified professionals, you can just imagine how daunting it might be for students. And that's the reason why we see that a lot of students are not able to get a proper internship up until their final year or so. And if you take a look at these big tech internships like Microsoft or Google or Salesforce or Amazon, like you just know like how the whole gap has pretty much widened because of a lot of different things. So there are internships, then there are freelance projects. Now, with the case of freelance projects, is that if you're trying to get into any one of them, you definitely need to have some really, really hard skills. You really need to have the capability to deliver. And for some college students, like it might just be a bit like on the hard side of things. Because you take up a project, you're getting paid on an hourly basis, and the client really needs to see something out from you. And though it might be like certainly like a learning experience, it might not be that smooth for you. So you have got internships, you have got like freelance, you can also build out your personal projects or so. But at the end, what really matters is that you showcase to some of your potential employers that you have some really practical code writing skills. And this is where open source exactly comes in, because there is no certain benchmark that you need to set. You don't need to interview with someone to actually contribute to an open source project. You're certainly not being overburdened by a lot of different things that you might see in freelance projects, like the time constraints, the budget, the whole deadlines, and all of these things. You can just go to an open source project. You can say like, hey, I really want to contribute, I really want to learn something out from here. And someone or the other can like maybe give you an issue or maybe just give you a task. You can try to hack around it. You can try to see like, okay, this is what I can do to like basically fix these things out. And as you do the things, you will learn from it. And the best part is that whatever you are doing, it is exactly reflecting on your public profile. So anyone who really wants to see that, hey, like, is this person really like, does this person really know the things that he's claiming to do? So it's easy. Go to their profile, check their contributions out, see if they're really good, see if they're really valid, and then make your decision. Because I guess that's a pretty good litmus test for really checking out like how good a particular like person is with their particular hard skills. So I guess like if you're a college student and if you are having a lot of troubles in getting some real world experience, just consider doing open source a bit. There are certain disadvantages. The first one is like you paid for your contributions. Like this is a certain disadvantage that a lot of people say, is that like, hey, I'm contributing to this project for these many months and I have not even got paid for it, or I have not got something really like out of it. And that's a valid argument. And this is the reason why we have certain open source programs that kind of support your open source contributions. So if you really have what it takes, then just go ahead, apply to some of these open source programs. Again, like these open source programs only run for a few months, like 3 or 4 months at best. So if you want something sustainable, just go for something like a GitHub sponsor or an open collective sponsor or something like that, so that people can continue sponsoring your open source work as long as they find it sustainable and as long as they find it viable. So okay, these are like some of the good reasons, I guess, like why you should be contributing to open source. But at the end of the day, it's really a rewarding experience. I don't have to like say to people that, hey, like I know these things and these things. I can just link to my contribution, say like I have worked on these kind of things, and this is the reason why you should really hire me. So if you're someone like who's trying to get a crack on the job market, I guess open source is the best way of doing that right now. Especially when people say that you need if you need a job, you need a work experience, but you can get a work experience only if you have a job. So open source kind of fills that whole gap, like in a better sense of word.
Yeah, like one thing just want to add, like a lot of people just contribute to different open source project when certain programs like LFX, Google Summer
Yeah.
of Code just in the running. So the one thing that I would mention, like do not go for just
Hmm.
for sake in contributing in this particular and get into this particular program.
Hmm.
Like I just share my experience myself. Like I contributed in a Mocha global organization little bit, like
Hmm.
around 2 to 3 months.
Hmm.
So at that particular time, I haven't worked with Vue.js before.
Hmm.
So I just learned and contribute in an issue, and the learning that I got is way more than an internship itself. because I contributed in a large code base and learned a lot of things there itself.
Yeah.
So
So maybe just for context,
that's
like
why.
I guess I can explain to the audience that over then, like I was one of the people driving Moja Global organization and most of the contributions over there. So that's where I exactly met Bhavna for the first time. So yeah,
Yeah, that's a very good experience itself.
yeah. Thanks for sharing.
So let's take some another question.
Hmm.
So are there any specific open source project you recommend for beginners or the intermediate people who can
Hmm.
contribute in that?
I guess there is no fixed set size that works out for literally everyone. It totally depends like what you as a person would exactly like to work on. Like a lot of people nowadays are being fascinated with low level programming, systems programming, and all of those things. So if you're really interested in these kind of stuff, I guess there are plenty of projects that you can find. I guess one of the most prominent project in this space is LLVM. Like it's a compiler technology, and I guess like it also participates in Google Summer of Code. So it might be something that you might really get interested in. If you're someone like who is more into web and like web front end, back end, and these kind of things, I guess there almost every organization needs someone to like work on these kind of stuff. So there is OWASP. There is I guess I forgot the name of the particular orgs. Uh, there is AOC, like there is this whole Australian open source org. Sorry, like it has been like a few months since I've checked out open source orgs on a very prominent basis. If you're more into like DevOps, cloud native, I guess there is CNCF. I guess the best org that you can find for finding these kind of projects. Uh, Now there are some particular open source orgs that are pretty much working on pretty historic technologies that are pretty much cutting edge. Like in context, I worked at an org called as Metacall during my Google Summer of Code, and Metacall basically had this library for interlanguage function calls. So just imagine like writing a function in JavaScript and calling that same function in Python or C++ or Java or C sharp. And I was like tasked to basically build a kernel around this. So like it was a daunting task. And like what I initially like set as the things that I wanted to do, like it was simply too ambitious. So the mentors had to cut it down to a more realistic timeline. But again, like it was a pretty rewarding experience at the end of the day. So the best part about working in open source is that you will always like you will never find these kind of like simple projects that you're always seeking out. So it's not always that you're tasked with building an application that has a front end, that has a back end, and a database, and you're done with that. You will almost find these kind of projects like too much overcrowded, and like a lot of people will be over there like asking for issues to basically contribute to. The best part about working in open source is that you're really working on some really cutting edge stuff. So the best way to like find out these kind of projects is I guess the GitHub Explore. If you don't know what the Explore page is, then you can just go to github.com, and over there would be like an Explore page. So maybe I can share my screen and I can just walk through that. um I guess I'm sharing it right now. Yeah, it should be visible. So there is a GitHub Explore page, and over here you can see that there are some trending repositories. So if I just click on some of these trending repositories, you can see like what are the projects that are trending right now. You will find it interesting that local stack is trending, and I'm wearing a local stack t-shirt right now, so that's fascinating. uh, but over here like you will find plenty of projects and the kind of domains that they're working in. So if you're interested in local stack, if you're interested in AWS cloud native and DevOps stuff, I guess like you can definitely check out local stack. If you're interested in like let us say more around I guess like these new advancements that is happening in like the whole generative AI space, you can definitely take a look at this whole Stable Diffusion Web UI project that has kind of got a lot of traction within the community right now. If you want to work on like let's say some more cloud native stuff, there is also Trivi, which I guess is a very popular container scanning tool that is out there that basically provides you with a list of the security vulnerabilities that you can find in all of your cloud native infrastructure. So just take a look at the explore page and try to find some really good projects that you can kind of contribute to. Again, don't look at open source projects just from this whole GSOC or GSOT or MLH like point of view. You will always find like pretty interesting projects that you can always contribute to. And some of the projects have also support your contributions. Like in our case, like if you're contributing at local stack, and if you're doing it like in a really consistent manner, like you have made somewhere like more than two or three different contribution, we will start paying you on the basis of the per contribution level. So that's a way we use to basically support your open source work. In some other cases, if you're contributing to an open source project that is basically being backed by a commercial entity, this is where we enter into the whole realm of like commercial open source projects. So local stack is a commercial open source project. Some other good examples can be maybe Gitpod is a pretty famous commercial open source project. Now with these commercial open source projects is that they are open source, the code is open, maybe the infrastructure is not. So eventually, like, you have to use their premium offerings to basically make the best use of the products that you're trying to like leverage. And obviously, like, you have to pay them. And in that way, these open source projects are getting backed by an entire company in itself. So if you're contributing to them, maybe you will have a better chance of actually getting to work at that particular company. So that's the reason like why a lot of companies, including local stack, basically mention that, hey, if you really want to work with us, maybe make a few contributions here and there, and then definitely we can take a look at your profile. I guess that's a really credible way, because you can definitely get acquainted with the code base. You can definitely get to see like, okay, these are some really good things that I can work on, and is it something that's really valuable for you? This is something that none of us actually do before we actually take up a job or an internship. But with open source, you can actually take a look at the project and just imagine, like, just ask yourself the question that, is this something that I really want to commit myself to? Is it like too hard for me? Is it too easy for me? Is it too like lame for me? Maybe I should find something that's really interesting. And I guess once you have that decision, things really get simple for you.
Yeah, let's agree with this particular point. Like, I think Hirsch itself got the role in local stack through open source contribution itself.
Yep. Kind of. Cool.
Yeah, same here. Like, where I am working as a part-time employee at
Hmm.
Monado, I also got the role here through open source contribution
Wow.
itself. So
So
open
I
source
believe like at
contribution.
Monado, like you're working as a C++ developer. So how did that
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
work out?
Yeah, that is quite amazing experience. Like, we need to create the front end, back end, API
Hmm.
integration, and everything in C++ itself.
Wow.
So sometimes it is quite hesitating, and we
Hmm.
need to think it like how we need to build this particular stuff.
Hmm.
Challenging, and I would say like I learn a lot by building in this particular stuff
Hmm.
itself.
Maybe you should start writing some blogs, like explain the how the whole workflow looks like. Maybe it
Yeah,
will
for
have
sure.
like a few good lessons for us as well.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So let's take some other
Awesome.
questions. What skills can student develop by contributing to open source itself? And how can this particular skill benefits them in future career itself?
I guess that's pretty self-explanatory. Like with open source, you're definitely building some really hard skills, and it's totally dependent upon like what kind of projects do you contribute to. So personally, like when I was contributing to Metacall, I kind of built a lot of skills in like C, C++, and Python, because that's where like most of the core technologies were in. I really struggled with Node back then, because what I traditionally saw Node as is like a runtime environment over which I can run my Express apps. But I really did not know like how I can use the Node APIs to do something that's really exceptional. But with my whole GSOC project, I got to like do something that's really wacky. So I guess like Bhavna, you might know about these things called as REPL, read, execute, like loops and all of these things. So we actually built out like a REPL that executes code in different languages. Like one single REPL that can execute your Python code, that can execute your JavaScript code. And I was like tasked to build that particular thing using Node. So Node has this whole built-in REPL functionality, and it was really daunting for me. But then my mentor stepped in, like he told me like, okay, this is how you do it, me out, and then we basically got that thing to completion. So I guess that was pretty good. So you really build like a lot of hard skills. The thing that I can emphasis upon is the soft skill development. So with open source, you definitely get to see like communication, collaboration happening like nothing else. Because if you're working at a job, like if you're like, let's say, working at an office, and so like you will definitely see like you're being siloed to one team, or like one group of people who are entirely driving out this one thing. But if you're contributing to open source, you definitely have to communicate with a lot of stakeholders that might be part of your organization, might not be even part of your organization. One of the best ways to actually see that happening in real time is like you can go to a project called as Kubernetes. I guess literally everyone knows about that. So Kubernetes gets contributions not just from the open source communities, but also from commercial entities. There is Google, Amazon, VMware, Red Hat, and a lot of these things. So back when I was working at Red Hat, like we used to see like a lot of these communications happening. So a few of the Red Hat engineers were also contributing to their internal like Kubernetes distribution called as OpenShift. They were also contributing to the upstream project that was called as a Kubernetes itself. So there was like really like to and fro happening, and this would not happen if you don't exactly have really hard, like really core soft skills. And these soft skills are communication, collaboration, respecting someone's like boundary, their time, and what exactly they are really comfortable with. Like these are the things that college or like the setting that we are in doesn't really explain us at the end of the day. It's something that we obviously try to develop once we get into the whole professional space. But with open source, like you will get to see these things like happening in real time, like getting to know about tools like Slack or Notion or Discord, writing some really good documentation, writing really descriptive PR messages. I guess like very few Indian developers I have seen really do that. Even I don't do that myself, to be honest. But try to explain some like what's the reasoning behind this particular change and all of these things. I guess these are some of the things that open source alone can teach you, because whatever contributions you are making, you can pretty much pre-assume that the person who will be reviewing it doesn't exactly know about that. Like they have simply no context, they simply have no background or something of that sort. So you really need to be sure that you're on point with with the whole communication thing, because that's what really matters. I guess this is exactly what open source teaches you the best. So if you're contributing to open source, make sure that apart from all of the hard skills, you also take away some really good soft skills from you. So yeah, I guess that would answer it.
Yeah, like other than that, you got a chance to meet some amazing people. That was
Yeah,
good.
exactly. So you get a chance to meet some amazing people. There is also this whole aspect of like going to different conferences or meetups and all. I practically did not go to like any of the in-person conferences or meetups. I mostly like used to do virtual talks for the projects that I'm contributing to or I'm building out. It's only recent that I'm going out to like different places to actually talk about the things that I'm building. So
No, yeah, I would
mm,
highly suggest to go in person talks as well. Like
yeah,
people come towards your side and say, "I know you. You are Harsh." That's one good point.
yeah, maybe
Ah, that would be
cool.
the great point.
Yeah.
Let's take some
Hmm.
more question. Yeah, that's the one question that I also want to ask you, like how we can balance our open source work with our academic as well as professional
Hmm.
responsibilities.
Hmm. Yeah. So I might not be the best person to talk about it, to be honest, because if like the whole my whole college experience was pretty much riding on a monkey balancing, to be honest. So I honestly like attended my college only for 1.5 years. For the rest 2.5 years, I was kind of on a permanent leave, like not from the college authorities, but I was supposed to like do my assignments, do my college exams, and apart from that, my college professors won't exactly disturb me. Like they knew what I was doing, they knew like I was busy in internships and all of these things, and they were like, "We are really okay with that. Just do the crucial things. We will manage out the rest." So I guess like this is where we come up with the point that if you're not able to get into a very good college, always try to find a college where you don't have attendance issues. I guess you would be like pretty much fine with that. So this is exactly what worked out for me. But there was like definitely some imbalance between like the kind of professional responsibilities that you had, some personal stuff, and there was also this whole constant like fear of preparation, like for like our upcoming interviews and all of those things. So I obviously see this as like a division between the kind of open source work that you're doing, or maybe the development work in essence, the more of like TSA plus core computer science, like these kind of like the core academic subjects that you're supposed to do only for the sake of interviews, and also some other college projects of these kind of things. So it obviously depends on what exactly is your priority at that particular point of time. So when I got into my Google Summer of Code and Google Season of Talks, I was really tensed out because my placements were supposed to start just after 3 months. So I was really like, okay, if I do this particular program right now, and let us say I don't get time to prepare for my actual interviews that would be coming up, and those interviews will be like loaded up with DSA questions and all on all of those things that I have not done for months by now. And maybe like I will just lose out the whole practice. So how exactly this whole thing will work out for me? But I still went ahead with my decision that hey, I want to do these programs. I don't want to like miss out on the opportunity. And it was mostly like dedicating a small portion of your time to basically like doing these kind of core things and just focusing on what really is the main point of focus for me. So my suggestion regarding the whole time management, because now COVID has gone, literally every college has opened right now. You won't get the same advantages that you might have got like 3 years back or something. So my whole point would be like always have a short-term focus and a long-term focus. By short-term focus, you can exactly dedicate your time in like what's exactly that I'm working on right now. So it might be an internship, it might be an open source program, it might be a freelance opportunity or something of that sort. And then there can be like a long-term focus. So long-term focus can be like, okay, I really need to get this one internship at this one big company, or maybe I need to really get good at my placements. I really need to like get into some really good company or something of that sort. Or maybe I should like really get my applications in for the MS and maybe just go to US or Canada or Europe to basically do my masters. So have these two kind of like focuses and just dedicate your time as per that. And again, it totally depends upon you. If you're really confident with what you're doing in the long term, I guess you won't even need to like dedicate that much time to that. But if it is something that will take real hard work, maybe you want to dedicate a bit of your time to that particular thing itself. So keep a focus on that itself, I guess. There is no real advice over here, opinions, and it totally depends like what kind of opinions do not. So yeah, I guess that would be my answer.
Yeah, the one thing that I would like to mention here,
Mhm.
like do not do two or three things together at the same time. You will definitely got burnout. Like I'm just sharing my experience. Like back in March itself, I got selected in XROS fellowship and MLH fellowship itself. So I am doing both the things together, and sometimes I feel I do not get any time to spend that particular money that I earn through this particular program, and reaching out with some amazing conferences and all. So just
Yeah.
an experience. Do not spend that much
I had
time.
the same experience. Like when I was working at Red Hat, so my internship at Red Hat started from January 2021, and like it was supposed to end at June itself. Now I got into Google Summer of Code like around May itself. I got into Google Season of Dogs around April itself. So it was like I was doing three different things at the particular same amount of time. And when my Red Hat internship got over, then I got into QuantSite. So I did not got any respite. I was like, okay, previously I was doing three different things. One thing got subsidized, another thing got added to my whole portfolio, right now. So it was like kind of a monkey balancing that we obviously need to do, and it really burned me out pretty well. Like there was a time like when I was contemplating like maybe I should drop one thing or the two, so that I can really keep my sanity in. But at the end of the day, I would really say like it was all about like what kind of priorities you have right now, and if you can take how much, like if you can take that much on yourself, if you can take, I guess that's pretty much like okay. I see like a few of my friends who have done the similar things, and for them it was a rewarding experience. Even I would say like that particular point of time when I was doing these kind of things, it was a rewarding experience for me. Maybe it won't be a rewarding experience for you. So just take into account your own personal health, your own personal like things, and then make that complete decision.
Yeah, makes sense. So
Yeah.
let's take some more questions. Like, can you please
Mhm.
share a personal success story or experience related to open source contribution?
I guess one of my personal success stories would be with Mojo Global itself. So like just to give a context about Mojo Global, so Mojo Global is an open source org that is pretty much like working on climate change action. And what we basically do is like basically we are building out a tool called as Flint, and this basically allows us to track greenhouse gas emissions over the period of like decades or so, and we try to like remove all these greenhouse gases from the land use sector, so basically forests, woods, and all of these kind of things. uh, so I got associated with Mojo Global like through one of the people I was in touch with. So his name was Parth. He did his Google Summer of Code with Mojo Global back in 2020, and I saw like Parth did pretty good at Mojo Global. So I was like, okay, let's have a look at Mojo Global and maybe like I can try to make out my application to like get into GSOC or GSOC or whatever program there is with Mojo Global. So I reached out to Mojo Global. Like I saw like there is a chance to contribute because Mojo Global didn't had a lot of contributors back then. So there was like when I got introduced to the community, there were like only 3 to 4 really core contributors who were like really contributing out. So I was like, okay, like the competition seems less. Okay, I should not like really use competition as a word because we don't like open source doesn't exactly support competition, but this is exactly what a lot of students, including me, back then used to see it as. So we got started. I had a really good rapport with all of the initial contributors. Like we really played out really well. We collaborated on a lot of different things. We really built out some really good plans that we made. Like we pretty much like put them on a successful note in the next 2 years or so. So we made the application for Google Summer of Code. I still remember like it was the day when the GSOC results for the organizations were going to be announced. That which organization got selected, which organization got rejected. We were in a call around 3:30 a.m. in the night or so. I was talking with my future mentor, and one of the other contributors. He joined in the call and he said like, "Okay, Moja Global got rejected for GSOC," and it was like a shattering moment for us. And then we were like, "Okay, what are we going to do?" So now there were only like 4 or 5 people in the call, and my mentor just said, "Okay, like maybe we didn't get into GSOC, but we can get into GSOT." So GSOT is the Google season of docs. And then I just volunteered out of nowhere that, hey, can I write the proposal for GSOT? So I said, like, okay, I'm gonna write the organization proposal for Google season of docs. So most people like write their own personal proposal. I was like, okay, like I can write the org proposal for GSOT itself. And my mentor was like, okay, let's just go ahead with that. So I formulated the proposal because I really had a very good idea about what the state of the documentation is within the community. I pitched it out to my mentor, and my mentor just made one last change. So in GSOT, you don't really have a very stringent process of application. So mentors can make a selection beforehand itself. So in the proposal, we had like positions for two technical writers. He changed technical writer one to hired, and he basically put my name over there. So he put up the org proposal with my name already present. That hey, Harsh is already a part of the whole GSOT thing. If we manage to get selected, and turns out that we end up getting selected in GSOT. So this was like really a start for me in Mojo Global. So over the next 6 to 7 months, like we really spent a lot of time in technical documentation, evangelizing, like fixing a lot of like docs experiences and all of these things. And by the time like my whole GSOT was over, we really built out very strong case for us to get into GSOC and GSOT the next year itself. So again, like I worked upon the proposals, we got into the whole Google Summer of Code and Google Season of Docs, like both of these programs as well. We had pretty good amount of successes in outreach internships, so we got like a lot of interns over there. We even got into LFX, and I personally had the chance to like manage like a lot of these projects going about. So if you go on to Mojo Global right now and you check out some of the projects like Flint UI, Flint Cloud, the Docs, at least like most of these projects were the ones where I was contributing the most. Uh, the two successes I had with Mojo Global was the first one that we got a funding from Azure. So basically, like they funded us for our DevOps and the cloud related project. And again, like I used that particular funding to basically set up the entire cloud infrastructure for Mojo Global running right on Azure, so that we can actually deploy our like we can deploy the Flint framework onto the cloud itself, and we can continue using that. Uh, the second success like was that I got the Google Open Source Peer Bonus Award uh, for my contributions at Mojo Global. So I guess that was like more of a personal success. But this basically outlined like the things that I did at Mojo Global. So I guess Mojo Global has been the most rewarding experience for me in terms of open source. It really like took me like 2 years to basically come to the whole like right from the whole ideation, the planning, and like really getting it to a stage where the community is sustainable right now. We managed to get like a few folks who are up and ready to like lead the community forwards, and I'm just really glad about that.
I think you meant a lot of folks in Mojo Global itself.
Yeah, I have this problem of like forgetting about people, so I don't even practically remember like who exactly did I mentor, like who were the people like I still remember right now. So
Yeah, just people came around you
yeah.
and tell you, I know you, but you didn't know you are.
Yeah,
Let's take to the
definitely.
last question itself. What are the some best practices for
Sure.
effective collaboration within open source communities? A fun question that I feel being beneficial for the people who just started
Hmm.
their career in open source itself.
Yeah, I guess I would definitely suggest to be as like direct and concise as possible when talking with people. So one of the things that I personally see that a lot of students are pretty terrible at is how they manage, like how they communicate with people. Because if you're trying to get onto some professional communication platform, like let's say IRC or let's say like Slack or something like that, you really cannot communicate with someone like in just a similar manner as you do on WhatsApp. So you really cannot like use those shorthand words or something of that sort. And it really like made me feel terrible to see like people really using these kind of languages in open source communities and all of those things. People really don't understand them. That's the first case. And even if they understand, they won't try to have communication in such a tone, because the whole point of open source is that you are really driving a particular piece of software through a collaboration mode, and collaboration should be as effective as possible. So if you're trying to communicate in open source, if you're trying to like set yourself in open source, always try to make sure that whatever issues you have, explain them in the best way possible. The second thing is always respect the community. Now, to be very frank and to be very honest, in every open source community, you will always find like a few people like who basically lead the entire community forward. So this is what I call them, like the benevolent dictators that happen in every community. I was a benevolent dictator in Project Level One, so I kind of relate to that. But most open source communities are trying to like reformat themselves to have like an open governance. So there are like few elected individuals who kind of like lead the communities forward, who kind of shape the vision, who kind of shape the future and all of those things. So what I would really say is like respect the open governance and respect the community out there. People will be in the community like from a lot of diverse backgrounds, like from different countries, different societies, different cultures. And if you're respecting them, only in that case you're really driving a lot of collaboration forward. The reason why I state this is because like there was this one ugly conflict that happened in one of the GSOC communities, like more recently with GSOC 2023. Well, one particular student got rejected out, and he was so adamant to the point that he even threatened to like put up a legal report against a particular organization. So the whole episode happened because he didn't had like an understanding of the whole open governance structure. He was like, if I really made the contribution, I'm the one who should be getting the chance. But often it happens, world is an unfair place to be honest, but often it happens, things are not really governed by the number of contributions and how good a particular person is. It also like depends on a lot of different factors that we often try to factor in as a mentor and org admin once we get to see those kind of things. uh so yeah, I guess like these are the things that I would mention, like respect the community, be clear in your communication, always have a positive outlook for the things that you're really looking to do. You will obviously not end up getting selected for everything out there, and that's completely all right. Things are not meant to work where you get all the opportunities and someone else like doesn't get to work on that. So respect them. And finally, if you do happen to get selected into an open source community, always try to pay the things forward. So like let us say you completed your whole GSOC or GSOC tenure. What's next? So in that case, again, like you might get your internship, you might get your full-time job, but always try to factor in as a person who was really there for you when you got started. So like in your case, your mentor was the one who got you started, who got you acquainted with the things and all of those kind of stuff. So you should also be the one who can kind of pay these things forward. So be in the community, try to participate in the open governance, try to participate like try to like get more and more newcomers involved to this, and try to like mentor them so that they can also lead the community forward. Because as you're starting up, you're really contributing, like I guess how you might know about the whole concept of vertical and horizontal scaling. So as you're starting up, like if you're just like working on your personal contribution, you're just vertically scaling yourself. At one point of time you will obviously hit a maximum capacity, and beyond that you won't be able to scale. That's the scale, like that's the limit of your personal contributions. But once you start mentoring someone, you start building some really good horizontal capacity. And then in that horizontal capacity, people can really get to their limit, and like they can really contribute in the well-to-do manner. So try to build similar capabilities within your own open source organization, so that once you actually go ahead with your life, and like once you actually go ahead with the things that you really care about right now, because priorities change over the time, but you can actually have and they can like pay back to the folks that they would mentor and so on. Like this is exactly what make open source community sustainable. So focus on that. I guess you'd be like pretty much in the right spot, and you can act as a very good open source citizen at the end of the. Perhaps it's really okay to not participate in open source, and you can still like be a good open source citizen if you're supporting the open source work in a sustainable manner, because this is exactly what matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree with your point. And any ending
Yeah,
notes, Harsh, would you like to add in the session itself?
I guess one of the ending notes that I would say is like thanks to Bhavna for building like I guess She Hacks is the first like women centric hackathon programs in India. Like I'm not sure about that, but like I have been participating in hackathons since 2019 and so. But I guess like I first came across the concept of like women centric hackathons only with She Hacks. So really kudos to her, and thanks for building out such an inclusive program. I guess like once I met Bhavna, like, and what I see her right now, like there has been like a drastic like upwards trend into her whole profile. So I guess like the work that she has been putting into is like really great, and thanks to Shihak for building out these opportunities for like people over here. And I would really like forward to see like how the whole Shihacks program actually gets to become like a much larger in scope, and can also like try to go to different Indian cities, like try to like bring more and more people. Because we see right now is that even though like we have so many women inclusive programs in India, we really don't see like a lot of people getting involved from some backward colleges in India right now. So she hacks can like definitely fill in the gap that a lot of other inclusive programs and bring a lot of people into the mainstream, and I guess that would definitely empower them. And if you're someone like from different countries, I guess like she hacks can definitely broaden the scope and like try to reach out to you and try to like bring you to the main fold as well. Rest apart, if you're into open source, like definitely use this as a leverage. But again, like don't consider open source just from the focal point of a few programs. At the end of the day, open source is much more than that. And even if you're not a full-time contributor, if you're not contributing like on a regular basis, like I was contributing up until a few months ago, but then I had my own full-time job, I had my own like responsibility, so I kind of got into that. But even if you're not contributing, you can still like be a good open source citizen, you can still like help out people, you can still mentor them, you can still help them get started. I guess this is something that would be like really crucial for you in your open source journey. Take things positively and don't get overwhelmed by the whole scope of open source on the whole. Some people take years and years and maybe even decades to like figure things out. So I guess that would be my closing note.
So thank you, Harsh, and all the folks that you attended the particular session. And I would like to thank you all for attending this particular session from the SheBuilds side, and looking to see you in tomorrow's closing ceremony itself. And
Yep.
let's see who will be going to be the winner of this particular thing.
Mhm.
And thank you, Harsh, for joining us and sharing your insights and personal experience on seizing opportunities through open source itself.
Yep.
And if you learn something, and you can share it on your social itself by sharing the speaker as well as she will have. And thank you. Till then, happy hacking, folks.